Hello bass family and welcome to Everything Bass. So I was just playing through today's guided improv, which we're going to be doing a 2-5-1 in minor. So it's a 2 chord to a 5 chord in minor. Now when you take the harmonic minor scale and you choose the 1 or the 2 chord, the 5 chord, and the 1 chord, you get, I'm going to do this in the key of C minor. So you're going to get D diminished as the 2 chord, the first chord. Second chord is G dominant 7, so G7 chord, and then it resolves to the 1, which is the C minor. A little caveat, I had a little accident right before filming where I've cut my hands pretty deeply, so I'm going to try to play and not bleed all over the world here. But hopefully I still can get across the concepts that I think are important. So this 2-5-1 progression is a very common progression, and you'll see it in a lot of different styles of music. So it's obviously a good choice for us to use as Guided Improv 3. So we have these triads. Now, let's just say in the world of your search history, this was recommended, but you don't have some of the foundational information. I'd say that's cool because I've provided it with previous videos. So if you're not familiar with the diminished triad, pause this one, go back, check out my diminished triad video. Same thing with the dominant 7th chord. You can actually find that. And there's some two great videos about the dominant 7th chord, and of course playing a C minor triad. You go back to that. So we're going to be doing some guided improv. Now, again, if this is your first video, what I mean by guided improv is improvisation. Normally, you can just kind of play what you feel and just explore new expressions and create in the moment, not write out, not prepare. You just on the seat of your pants, you go and play. And that's a really great skill for all bass players, all musicians to have. But to really develop it from the beginning, you need to actually have some guidance. And one of the things I found valuable for when I learned it, and I think you'll find valuable too, is to have some restrictions, like only play these notes, only play here on the neck. Now why that's important is that shows you you can see growth better. Like if I was to give you this progression, turn on the drum machine and say just play, chances are you'll play what you already can play. After a long time you might start trying new ideas, but initially your go-tos are usually your safety net. So, and that's cool, but if you want to improve your improvisation quickly, then by putting some restrictions, you can measure growth. And how do you measure it? By how well you're executing it. Like I'm going to give you a series of exercises here, just 3 with an extra credit, but you'll be able to see, okay, well good, all right, the first one I nailed, second one was a little harder, I'm going to spend more time on that, so on and so forth. So let's get into it. So over this progression, D diminished, G7, and C minor, let's start with the first exercise, and that's play a quarter note only bass line using just chord tones. Start by playing the root, 3rd, 5th, and octave in that order until you're comfortable, and then mix up the order of the chord tones to create a fluid bass line. When I'm having you do quarter notes, because that's very much like a walking bass line, because you're just playing on the downbeat. And so if you're playing along with a click track, every time your foot taps, you're playing a note. So boom, 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 boom. That's a quarter note bass line. So yeah, so let's see what that would look like. So if you were playing with the D diminished triad, it could be like, you would sound like this. Now you notice on the G7, I just played the G major triad because I outlined 3rd, 5th, and octave as the only other notes besides the root. However, as you go on with exercise 1 and you're familiar with the G dominant 7th arpeggio, you can add in the 7th for clarity and to add some, little spice. When you do that, really listen to how just adding a 7th to your bass line above the triad adds so much dimension and so much emotion to it that I think that'll be a good exercise for you to go through. So after you've played that for a while, where you can just make sure, and why do I have you do this? Well, it's kind of mapping out the fingerboard, knowing where you're playing, where you're going to shift. You can also shift to other spots. Like I'm doing this, I could do the D diminished here, the G major here, C minor here. And just, same thing, root 3, 5, 3, root 3, 5, or sorry, I should have been doing root 3, 5 octave. After that, then start mixing it up. Now, what do I mean by that? Don't feel so encumbered to always start on the root. Don't feel like you have to include the fifth. Maybe leave the third off. What you're doing is you're making decisions and you're being conscious in your improvisation. You have to be conscious. You have to be thinking and be intentional going, okay, this time I'm going to do this. By doing it in a formula, it helps you make sure that you're not falling into any old habits or any old muscle memories. So, after a while, your bass line could sound cool. It could be like... by just mixing and matching. See how you can... Triads are not limiting. It's not remedial. You can actually, with some invested time and conscious thought and really knowing your fingerboard, you can create really powerful lines just using triads. And that's why we put this at the beginning of our improv, because if we can build a strong foundation in how to get the most out of triads, as we start adding on the sevenths, we add scale notes, we add things like that, chromatics, you're adding them on a strong foundation. Now, if you've been frustrated by your ability to improvise over changes in the past, one thing that could have happened, because it happened to me, is I didn't have a great foundation in triads. So as I started trying to do like diminished scale improvisations, everything was falling apart. It wasn't really locking in with the harmony. One of the instructors at MI that I studied from had a great method to see if your bass line is really harmonically sound, is that you would record like with a band, with drums, guitar, keys, vocals, and everything. Then they would drop everything but your bass track to see if you could still follow the progression. And we did this with different styles of music, and it really kind of force-fed me the idea of, like, when I'm creating a bass line, if it stood by itself with no one else playing, would you still hear the composed harmony of the song? And I think we should all try to do that. Now, granted, maybe you're in a band where you just rock on the roots, and that's powerful, and that can be very emotional. So you're not really harmonically, describing the song, but you're showing the root movement. But this is to take it to another degree. To be able to do that is a strong, strong skill. All right, so that was number one, quarter note bass lines using just the chord tones. Number two, play an eighth note only bass line, or actually I say melody here, using just chord tones, exploring the full position arpeggios and not starting every measure on the root. Stay below the 10th fret. So I take the 10th fret below, and I want you to farm out ideas. Now, a constant eighth note bass line means that for every measure, you're going to play 8 notes. That's pretty simple. If you're tapping your foot, you're going to play both when the foot comes down and when the foot comes up. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Before you even start the metronome or you play along with the wave file that I have on my Patreon account, what you want to do is just start getting some ideas. So one of my favorite things was I would start like on D diminished, and I would start and I would go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Now I'm there, and that's my eight notes. If I just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. My next is G minor. Well, I'm on an F. So I'm sorry, G dominant. So I'm on an F, so I could slide up and play. And then I look at my C, it's like, oh, look right there. And of course, there's 2 measures of C, so you'd end up playing 16 notes. Taking a moment, instead of being under the gun, like putting on the loop and starting to jump in it, that's going to be frustrating. Stop the metronome, stop the loop, and just start figuring out how things can work out, and just count the numbers like I did. And after a while, then when you feel like, okay, I've got something to get together, put on the loop, and you might be going, well, that's not improv, Dale. That's just like making up a bass line. Yes, but think if you tried to improv without knowing where all those notes were, it's not going to go very well. So taking a moment and mapping out the notes, play along, and then start freeing yourself up. Another good way to look at it is look at the full, what we call full position arpeggio. Like on the D diminished. All right, I can include this flat 5 right there, and I can go down to the third. That's out of the position, and the G major. Now, if I do the C minor here. By finding where all those notes are, utilizing all of your neck. Now, if you have a 5-string, 6-string, even better, you'll have more ability to do that. then turn on and start making up and start just kind of connecting the dots. The other big thing here is don't feel the need to always, since you're doing a melody, you don't have to always start on the root. And it's a good habit. You can always identify like certain bass players in their path on learning how to solo when they always start by hitting the root. Boom, ba da 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 boom, da 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 boom, da 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 da. By always breaking it up by playing, you're going, okay, they haven't really gotten away from that. When we put on our melody hats or our soloing hats, we don't have to play the root at the beginning. We're going to trust that with the other musicians in the band. And in fact, it's super limiting as an expressive tool to always start on the root. Sometimes, starting on the third, starting on the fifth can be super powerful and create new ideas and new emotions. All right, so that's number 2. Number 3, now do the same thing as exercise number 2, but from the 10th fret higher. So you're going to start on the 10th fret and go higher. This is because there was a time in my life, man, anything above 12th fret I was uninterested in. And I kept telling myself, well, I'm not a soloing bass player, so I'm not going to need that. Not realizing that even just playing jazz in times or playing along with big band charts, I had to be up there on certain sections, and I was in virgin territory. I was uncomfortable. Also, the technique changes. Your fingers are closer, your elbows out instead of this way. It's going to be this way. All these things make it so it's different. It is different to play up there. So even if you're saying, well, Dale, I don't want to solo. Yeah, I get that, and maybe you don't have to solo, but maybe you'll play a melody, or maybe someone in the band will want you to go up there to play something because it's really better for the song. So it's good to take exercise 3, do the same 8th note only exercises from 10th fret higher. So those are 3 powerful ways to develop your improv, and I actually had a huge list, but I trimmed it down to those 3 because I didn't want to overwhelm you with options. I want you to just focus on what you can focus on and measure the growth. Lastly, I did give you an extra credit. The extra credit challenge is play an 8th note solo using any rhythms you'd like, but staying in a 5 fret area, no shifting. So basically, finding an area on your bass that's 5 frets and don't get out of it. Now, that might require you to learn some new patterns. Just off the top of my head, let's say I choose this 5 fret area. So I'm going to go from 9th to the 13th fret. So I have a D diminished here. I have the G major here. Now the C below is out, so I have to play up here. So you see where taking an area, and you can move in, and after you've done this, try another 5 fret area, and try that constant 8th note line. Like that. It really develops your musicianship, and if this is new to you, you're entering a new area of study, because if you've done your work and you know your arpeggios, you know your scales, things like that, then you'll find that this kind of study really is an application. I always liken it to when you're in high school and you had a science class. You had the lecture class, the science class, then you had the lab. So you would talk about a concept in the first part, and then you would do it, and you would get your hands dirty, and you would experience in the second. Guided Improv Series is the experience. It's the lab. Taking all this stuff, learning your fingerboard, basic techniques, arpeggios, and soon to be scales, and applying them musically, allowing you to get better at making up music on the fly. That's one point. The far goal is that as you hear something in your head, if you've practiced improv, you have a better chance of externalizing this new sound in your head if you kind of work that out, get that muscle strong, the ability to consciously improv over changes. So that's pretty cool. Now we're going to move on to our encore item, and that is Reeves Gabrel's solo album, The Sacred Squall of Now. Man, the reason I chose Reeves Gabrel is I had the opportunity to play with him at Musicians Institute. He was a guest artist, and it was myself and drummer Gary Ballard. We formed a power trio. We performed in front of hundreds of guitar players because it was part of a Guitar Player Magazine weekend, I think, or something like that. One of the magazines, I think, was hosting it. And Reeves wrote for them and was a featured, actually, I think he was headliner. So we played the show with no rehearsal, no songs. We made it up completely on the fly. And that, Reeves gave me my introduction to the kind of addictiveness of improv music. It's really seat of your pants. And sometimes you have failures, but sometimes you have amazingly glorious moments. So check out this album. In particular, 119 years ago, I mean, this encapsulates that Reeves has no boundaries. Reeves will use interesting effects. He uses different devices, mechanical devices, to hit the strings and do things, yet always in service of the song and supporting a harmony, supporting a melody. 13, I've always butchered the name of the song. Husnu, whatever that is. Check it. It's S-U or H-U-S-N-U. Check that song out. Probably my favorite track on the album. And then, of course, Fire Down. Fire Down's a driving rock tune, but always with that little bit of Reeves that makes it interesting. So I really, really suggest that you check them out, especially if you kind of feel like the music you've been listening to is just all the same and you need something fresh. Check out this album. It's not new. It actually, I believe, was the year that I played with him. I could be wrong on that. It was in the same time frame. But it breaks boundaries. It changes things. It really shows you. He's answering the question on every song, what if? What if I do this? What if I make this sound? What if the chord's moving this way, but I'm moving this way? So that's why I really like it, and I hope you guys check it out. Reeves Gabrels, The Sacred Squall of Now. So before I go, I want to remind you that whenever I do an improv, guided improv course, I will provide for you a WAV file that you can download by becoming a Backstage Pass member. And it's a WAV file because it seems like that's very universal. Plus, if you happen to have a DAW system, you can import the WAV file and then record yourself over it for even more benefit. But it plays on most devices. So you can go to the link in the description below to get to my Patreon account. If you become a Backstage Pass member, that means that every post that I put on there, you have access to, and you can download the sheet music, and you can download, if there is, a WAV file. There'll be other WAV files coming on other things, and also there'll be some exclusive content only for the Patreon subscribers where I go a little deeper and maybe show different techniques. But anyway, just to get you going so you can play, because it's important to play over the chords, that's available to you. Also, if you have a looper and you're familiar with playing chords, if you happen to have another musician in your family or in your house that can play the chords and is patient enough to let you kind of do all these, maybe they record them for you, whatever. Just do whatever you can that you can actually hear your improvisation against the chords. It's very, very important. All right, guys, thank you so much for stopping by. This is kind of the meat of these videos. I love improv. I love teaching improv. I love giving you guys vehicles and methods to unlock new creative expressions from yourself. So thank you for stopping by. If you could do me a solid, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'm tantalizingly close to the 1,000 mark. Love to get over there soon. It's just one of those watershed moments that kind of gives you fire and gets you up in the morning to work on the channel some more. Also, just give me a thumbs up if you like this video. Share it with a friend would be great. And yeah, then we'll just meet back here for another video. Really enjoy this. Oh, and lastly, hey, we have a really cool Facebook group. And if you go to Facebook group and search Everything Bass with Dale Titus, you'll get to the page that I've created. And every day there's interactions from bass players, and it's very, very cool. And I invite you to be part of that. There's no fee, of course. It's just a Facebook page. You just follow it, jump in the conversation, let us know you're there. Love to have it. It's a growing family. It's right now about 550, I think, followers, and pretty active. When I throw out a question, when I post something, people jump on pretty quickly. And that's what I wanted it for. I wanted us to have this meeting place, both in social networks and on YouTube and in clinics when I start doing clinics again, where we can all meet up, talk together, share ideas, and all become better. So thank you so much for stopping by. Thanks for joining me on Guided Improv 3, and let me know how it goes. See you guys.